This is Michael Lukes with the Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization, joined by Tim Huntley, entrepreneur, advisor, writer, and entrepreneur in residence. Among all of his endeavors, past and present, he's currently working hard on an entrepreneurial life. Hi, Tim. Thanks a lot for joining me.
Hey, my pleasure, Michael. Thanks for the opportunity.
You co-founded Ganymede Software in 1995, several years after graduating from NC State. Have you always been entrepreneurial?
I would say yes and no. I didn't have a company or anything like that prior to starting Ganymede, but I had always done small kind of entrepreneurial endeavors. And, like in college, for example, I had a booth at the flea market where I bought and sold sports memorabilia, and that taught me a lot, actually. But then actually inside of IBM, the job I had prior to starting Ganymede, the team that I worked with actually tried to do something fairly entrepreneurial inside of the company, where we took 8 people and grew it to 30 people in about a year, and we're doing kind of some cutting-edge stuff, but it kind of got to be too bureaucratic, and that's one of the reasons we left the company.
So what really inspired that, for that business to start? Was it certain things that were going on during your current, work week or the software? Did you guys notice an opportunity or just kind of want to create your own thing? What really led to the creation of the company while you were all working at IBM?
Sure. I mean, when we went from 8 people to 30, we really tried to hire well and surround ourselves with the best people. And that's one of the things we took with us when we left the company. We wanted to construct a culture and an environment where we really only worked with the best and the brightest people. But back to your point, when we were working in an industry, and it was specifically with networking hardware and software vendors, we definitely saw an opportunity. And what IBM afforded us the opportunity to do was kind of become, I'll call it, domain experts within that industry, where we were technically savvy, and we built relationships with what would be our customers after we left. And we kind of knew, without having to kind of start from scratch, that if we built a certain product, we knew that that would be successful based on what we were doing inside of IBM.
Now, the company was sold in 2000 after growing significantly in just a 5-year span. What were some of the keys to success and the keys to your growth?
Sure. So, I mentioned one, which was, hiring the best people. And honestly, we learned some of those lessons during that rapid growth inside of IBM of what to do and what not to do. So that was one key. We ended up raising about $10 million during that 5-year span, and that certainly provided a lot of fuel. We'd already proven kind of product market fit at that time, but that fuel led to some growth. And the other thing that was really critical for us is we were able to establish a couple of key partnerships along the way. One was with a company called Network General, and then later we did a fairly extensive partnership with Hewlett-Packard.
Why did you decide to sell instead of continuing to grow the company?
Sure. It's a multifaceted answer to the question, but you have to remember the time frame, and you probably personally don't remember it, but in 2000, we were right at the end of the internet bubble, and we were all looking around going, this is kind of ridiculous in terms of the valuation companies are getting, the types of companies that are going public. So we kind of had a decision to make at that time. Do we continue with this silliness, or is it time to kind of take our money off the table? And that was certainly part of the decision. The company that purchased us was an excellent company, so we felt good about both selling to them and committing to be part of that company for 3 additional years in which we were locked up. And the other piece, just quite frankly, was if we had stayed private ourselves, we would have needed to raise some additional funding. And again, because of the timing with the internet bubble and stuff starting to blow up, we just didn't feel that that was the right answer. We thought that we would probably be committing ourselves to another 5 years before there would be an exit opportunity.
Looking back on that experience, what lessons did you learn, and do you have any regrets?
I mean, it's certainly hard to have any regrets. It turned out extraordinarily well. We were a real company in that we had, I think about $13 or $14 million in trailing 12 months revenue at the time. But the price that we were paid was quite extraordinary, and it was kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity. In terms of regrets, I don't. I think it was the right decision. I enjoyed the 5 years, but so no real regrets. In terms of lessons, I'll give you one specific one, and it's also generalizable. But one of the mistakes that we made pretty early on was getting serialized in our fundraising process. So we started in the summer of '95 talking to a few different VCs, and we ended up getting a term sheet from one, and it just wasn't the right fit for us. So we passed on that. We still decided we wanted to raise money, so we moved on to what looked like a good fit in terms of a corporate partner. We also got an offer from them, but for various reasons, that wasn't the right answer either. So we finally decided to raise about $750,000 from a group of angel investors. But kind of with the benefit of hindsight, those processes should have been going on all at the same time, so we could have picked and choose from what we wanted as opposed to finishing with one, deciding it wasn't the right thing, and moving on to the next. And like I said, I think that's a general lesson that can be applied to a lot of situations we faced with the company where we were just kind of single-minded in our approach.
Now tell us a little bit about your current endeavor, an entrepreneurial life.
Yeah, so this kind of started with me plugging back into the entrepreneurial world in the past couple of years. I had taken time off to be a dad of twin boys for a few years, and that was kind of its own startup experience. But anyway, so I've been mentoring at a local accelerator called the Startup Factory in Durham, and I found that extremely enjoyable. But what it was a problem with it is it's kind of one-on-one time. There was no way to really leverage my time. So what I decided to do was create a website where I could share information in a one-to-many kind of format. And as I started writing, I started reaching out to people. I found that the people who were most receptive were college students because they are still in more information gathering mode as opposed to somebody who's out of school, heads down 100% on their business, and they're kind of don't want to be pestered. So the idea is writing for a collegiate entrepreneurial student who maybe needs a different view than let me go raise $5 million in venture capital and move to Silicon Valley and try to sell this for $1 billion. I think that's too often the narrative that we hear from some of the major national press, places like VentureBeat or TechCrunch, and it just kind of skews the reality of what it means to start a business. So I want to tell stories, write about entrepreneurs who are doing cool things, maybe bootstrap, maybe just by winning a competition, or venture capital is fine, but I don't want that to be the limit of what I'm talking about.
On behalf of Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization, I want to thank you for agreeing to speak at the 2013 CEO National Conference in Chicago in late October. What will you be speaking about?
So what I want to talk about at the conference is raising money from angel investors. Like I mentioned early in our discussion, we raised an initial seed round of about $750,000 from angels, and that was maybe 25 people. So I have experience on that side, and since I've gotten back into the entrepreneurial community, I have also been making a number of investments myself. So what I want to talk about is, how angel investors decide what they want to invest in. Also, from the entrepreneur's perspective, what you need to look at when you're evaluating who to take money from. And then finally, I want to cover some tactics for raising a round of funding from angels.
Now, Tim, you work with young entrepreneurs frequently. Why do you believe in supporting young entrepreneurs?
I see so many problems with the education system. And the president came out yesterday and was talking about the problem with so many students coming out with massive debt. And I see, the entrepreneurial path being so much more viable today than it was 20 years ago. The cost of starting a business is much lower. So I want to see more students looking at a path of starting a business as opposed to necessarily settling for a career or something else. I think it's certainly much more viable and can prevent some of the problems that we're seeing today with the education system.
From your personal experience, what's been your biggest mistake as an entrepreneur?
Well, I guess I kind of touched on it before. It's getting serialized. It's getting too settled on how an outcome is going to turn out. So, I fully believed when we were talking to venture capitalists and we had this term sheet that that's what we were going to do, and yet that's not how it worked out. We had several different offers to be acquired along the way. And if you would have asked me at certain points in those discussions, is this going to work out, I would have sworn to you that it would have, but it didn't. And that's the nature of most things entrepreneurial. It's a numbers game, and you can't bet on kind of just a single outcome. You need to be covered in multiple different ways. So that was a hard lesson for me, but I think I finally figured that out near the end.
What's your best piece of advice for a young entrepreneur?
I would say, for a student especially, make sure you're giving yourself an opportunity to get some domain expertise outside of the realm of a consumer. So, you don't necessarily need to go work for a big company like I did to IBM, but maybe taking some internships, perhaps taking some technical classes, some coding classes, something that gives you deeper insight into a particular industry, so that when you decide to do something, you are much more knowledgeable about your customer and about the real problems that they're facing. So that would be my best advice.
Great. We're going to finish up here with just a couple of fun fact questions. What's your favorite thing? Sorry, what's that?
I said that's fine. Shoot.
All right. What's your favorite thing to do to relax?
Well, I mentioned that I have kids, so I really don't get a chance to relax. They keep me pretty busy. But, the reality is I've constructed my life in the past few years where I don't, spend 8 or 10 hours a day doing something heads down 100%. I work from home, and, I try and integrate things that, keep me kind of grounded during the day. So I spend time with the kids. I'll go for a run. I'll do things like that. So I don't really think about it quite that way.
If you could add one entrepreneur in the world to your team, who would it be and why? So whether that was, your previous company when you were running a software company or an entrepreneurial life now.
Yeah, I thought about that maybe a little bit, and I guess the answer that jumps to mind for me would be Jeff Bezos at Amazon. I started Ganymede maybe a year or two after he started Amazon, and just to watch the decisions he's made, what he's been able to build, being willing to fail and fail miserably at some of his ideas has quite honestly been inspiring, because, that's the reality, and he continues to take chances even today as this, multi-billion-dollar company. He just personally just bought the Washington Post, and I think it'll be interesting to see what he does with the digital publishing industry. So I would have loved to have the opportunity to spend some time working with him.
Well, once again, this has been Michael Lukes with Tim Huntley. Tim, thanks a lot for your time. We look forward to seeing you speak at the CEO National Conference.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.